Namaste and welcome to our continuing series, The Life Divine with Rangada. We are on chapter Indeterminates, Cosmic Determinations and the Indeterminable, page number 321, the first paragraph, but an approach from the material end.
So, as usual, we will summarize what he has said in the previous para for the sake of continuity. Okay, so in the previous para, he says that mind influences body at a higher level. When you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, the mind consciousness can control things in the body. But in the lower, he says mind influences body at a higher level, just as body dominates mind at a lower level. At our level, we may not be conscious of it, but our body is determining largely our even psychological behavior. If I have an upset stomach, it changes my mood. Okay. If I am burdened by too many things, then I lose my. If I am bothered too much by too many things, I am disturbed. So, the body has got a very big influence on the mind and our behavior at the lower level. But in the spiritual planes of consciousness, mind controls body, mind, life to a certain extent. But at the highest level, spirit controls both. That's what he has said in the previous para. So, I'll read out the summary, a very small one, and then we'll go to the para we have to read today. Mind influences body at a higher level, just as body dominates mind at a lower level. But finally, it is spirit that is master of matter and is slowly emerging from the dark, tenebrous substance of matter. Mind is involved in matter, and as it goes on emerging slowly, when it reaches to these second spiritual levels of consciousness, it starts dominating the lower nature. Okay.
Rangada, I am just noticing we had not finished explaining the previous paragraph.
We will do that.
Yeah, I think it's from the line on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we start from.
So, okay. I'll finish the summary and then we'll go back to what Nili is saying. It then becomes slowly emerging from the tenebrous substance of matter. It then becomes possible to conceive of a divinized body, supramentalized matter. Why? Because as you keep going higher and higher, mind begins to control the lower nature. So if you go high enough, it will be able to completely control the lower. And we can say it in this way. We can say that life is nothing but matter and life combined. In other words, we have injected life into matter, and the result is insects and animals and finally even men. Okay? Now, then we have mentalized matter. Matter, if you put the capacity of thought into matter, you have the brain, human brain, which is capable of thought. Okay? Note interestingly that our muscle is only lifed matter. It is life matter. But our brain is mind matter. So exactly in the same way, we can conceive of supramental matter. So that is why, theoretically at least, it is possible. That's what he has said. Now, I go back to the previous para, last sentence maybe. Okay, so on the other side, in the opposite order of process, that by which the mind can transmit its ideas and commands to the body, can train it to be an instrument for new action, can even so impress it with its habitual demands or orders that the physical instinct carries them out automatically, even when the mind is no longer consciously willing them. Those also more unusual but well attested, by which to an extraordinary and hardly limitable extent the mind can learn to determine the reactions of the body, even to the overriding of its normal law or conditions of action. The These and other otherwise unaccountable aspects of the relation between these two elements of our being become easily understandable, for it is the secret consciousness in the living matter that receives from its greater companion. It is this in the body that, in its own involved and occult fashion, perceives or feels the demand on it and obeys the emerged or evolved consciousness which presides over the body. So, long sentence, and we'll have a look at it carefully. So, on the other side, in the opposite order of process. What is the opposite order of process? We'll see. That by which the mind can transmit its ideas and commands to the body. So, mind can have an influence on the body. That's what he's saying. There are many, many examples which we'll look at. It's very interesting. Okay, so.
There is a book called The Biology of Beliefs by Bruce Lipton. So he has done a research on how our DNA can be remodified if we change our thought patterns and our attitude.
That is very, very fundamental.
Fundamental.
But
exactly.
it can be even at a lower, more superficial level also. Just imagine when you are training. If I have a sitar in my hand and I have never done it, okay, I'll not be able to do. So mentally, you first begin with your mental and vital. You say this is sa re ga ma, and you train your fingers. Once you have trained your fingers, you don't have to think anymore. Automatically the hand is going. Just like writing also. Even writing also is like that. In the beginning, when I'm a child, I have to say, what is my name? I have to write letter by letter. I have to exert my mind and put letter by letter. I have to train my mind for that. But once it is done, if a sentence is given to me, the mind will automatically go. My mind will be thinking of something else, but my hand will be writing. So, this is what he is saying, that the mind can transmit its commands and powers to this. To such an extent it can go that it becomes automatic. The reactions of the body can become automatic. Okay? Sleepwalking, for instance, is one instance. Okay? You can even, in sleep, you can even walk on the parapet of a terrace, but you will never fall down. It is so controlled. So this is possible. Okay? And also there is the example of hypnotism. In hypnotism also, in hypnotism it's not your own mind which is putting, but somebody else which is putting thoughts into your, and the body will obey. Okay? I'll count 10. The hypnotist tells you, I'll count 10 and you will fall asleep. If you believe in him and surrender to him, this will happen. And then he will tell you to examine your past and then try to find the problem which is at present, the complex that you have. What is the origin of that complex, he will try to find. So this is what Swami is saying here. And what you are saying is right down to the body, the cell level.
Cell level, yes.
Okay. And that's exactly the work that Mother was doing.
Exactly.
She is trying to change the conditions in the cell.
Right.
Okay.
But I mean, after reading his book and seeing his video, it is a very mentalized approach that he talks about, but Mother talks about it from the point of view of consciousness, which is more integral.
Spiritual consciousness. Yeah. Even mind can have a control over body-mind life, of the body, but spirit, that's what he said in the previous one, that finally it is spirit that controls everything. So, on the other side, in the opposite order of process, that by which the mind can transmit its ideas and commands to the body, can train it to be an instrument for new action. I'll give you another instance. You have heard of planchette. Automatic writing, what is called. Okay, Sriyamdas experimented with that. There is a medium, and the medium makes himself calm and quiet, and he takes a pen, and there's a paper on top, and and then they call a spirit. Okay, and the spirit starts telling you. You ask questions. Okay, and the spirit starts. It's a disembodied being. Okay, he doesn't have a body, but he is a man or a soul or whatever it is, a consciousness, and he starts. Your hand automatically goes on writing. No interference by the mind. If there is interference by the mind, the recording will not be correct. So this is what he's saying, that it can be that way. It can transmit its ideas and commands to the body, can train it to be an instrument for new action, can even so impress it with its habitual demands or orders that the physical instinct carries them out automatically, even when the mind is no longer consciously willing them. You may be even writing and you may be thinking of something else. The mind is somewhere else. Okay, so even when the mind is no longer consciously willing them. Those also more unusual but well attested, by which an extraordinary and hardly limitable extent the mind can learn to determine the reactions of the body, even to the overriding of its normal law or conditions of action. I think he's hinting at levitation here. I think that's what he's saying. It's not very clear, but there may be other phenomena also that can happen. But
Like there in, I think, talks by Nirodhar and Sri Aurobindo, or I think someone was asking Sri Aurobindo about his experience in jail where his body actually levitated, and he asked Sri Aurobindo that did you experience that? And Sri Aurobindo just politely said, you have to ask the attendant, how will I know?
yeah, but in another place he said that yes,
he did, of course.
Most of the body was not touching the ground, but some of it was touching the wall.
Right.
And the Scottish guard who came,
yes, he
was
got
a Scottish
frightened.
guard, he saw that, got frightened and ran away. What is this? It's floating in the air. So, I think he's in meaning that, but I'm not sure, he may be meaning something else also. Those also more unusual, but well attested, by which to an extraordinary and hardly limitable extent, the mind can learn to determine the reactions of the body, even to the overriding of its normal law or conditions of action.
Like, there are things like walking on water, which we discussed earlier, those things, I think.
That's right. You teach the body to do all those things. That's exactly what he's saying. Walking on water is the same phenomena as levitation. And those and other otherwise unaccountable aspects of the relation between these two elements of our being become easily understandable. There is constantly a reaction between spirit and matter. In the lower levels of consciousness, matter is determining and dominating spirit. At the higher levels of consciousness, spirit starts dominating matter, and at the highest level, spirit is completely master of whatever it is producing. The three levels. That's what he's saying. Okay, so these and otherwise unaccountable aspects of the relation between these two elements of our being become easily understandable, for it is the secret consciousness in the living matter that receives from them its greater companion. It is this in the body that in its own involved and occult fashion perceives or feels the demand on it and obeys the emerged or evolved consciousness which presides over the body. Now, they're very interesting. Greater companion. What's he talking about? Okay. For it is secret consciousness in the living matter. There is a consciousness in matter. There is life in matter, and in the life which is in matter already, there is also consciousness. So, the consciousness in the body is obeying the consciousness above, which is its greater companion. That's what he's saying. It's like a younger brother and an elder brother. The younger brother, the consciousness in the body, is responding to the elder brother, consciousness higher up. But you don't feel it's the consciousness reacting, you feel it's the body reacting. That's what he's saying. It is this in the body that in its own evolved and occult fashion perceives or feels a demand on it and obeys the emerged or evolved consciousness which presides over the body. Finally, the conception of a divine mind and will creating the cosmos becomes justifiable, while at the same time the perplexing elements in it which our reasoning mentality refuses to ascribe to an arbitrary fiat of the Creator find their explanation as inevitable consequence of a consciousness emerging with difficulty out of its opposite, but with the mission to override these contrary phenomena and manifest by a slow and difficult evolution its greater reality and its true nature. So, there is an involution of consciousness in matter, and slowly it is emerging. And as it keeps emerging, first the power of matter, matter overpowers, if you want, spirit, mind. But as it keeps on emerging, it becomes more and more powerful, and finally it can become master of the. If you put it in terms of Purusha and Prakriti, which is actually the same thing with different words, in matter, Prakriti is dominant. It is moving and it hides consciousness in itself. Okay? It does not allow consciousness to emerge. But because it is a divine consciousness, it emerges slowly with difficulty in spite of the resistance of matter. And finally, when it emerges sufficiently well, it starts becoming separate from the influence of matter at the level of the self. And as it keeps growing higher and higher, it starts dominating and dictating terms to Prakriti. This is the fact. They are inversely proportional to each other always. In matter, if you want to put it very gross mathematical terms, for understanding's sake, Prakriti in matter is 99.9%. Consciousness is 0.01%. As you keep emerging in the self, consciousness becomes 99.9 and force becomes 0.01, because you are in an immutable consciousness. You are static. You are not acting at all. So force is not there. As you keep going higher and higher, at the highest level, they are both equal to each other. You can say 50-50. A very crude way of explaining, but it is easy to understand that. And why am I saying 99.9 and not saying 100%? Because consciousness is there even in matter, but in a very suppressed manner. In the same way, in the self, force is there present, but you don't perceive it, you don't need to perceive it, you don't want to perceive it. But as you keep going higher, you realize that you have the power to do things in the physical world. Okay, so that's what he said in the previous para. So here in the previous one, he has dealt with mind over matter. Okay, it reminds me of a very funny saying. This is a big problem in philosophy. Mind and matter. Matter. You know, you've heard of that? Yeah. The question, what is mind? The answer can well be, does it matter?
Never mind.
and what is matter? Never mind. It's interesting. In other words, very difficult to solve the problem. Okay, so we read the para now. But an approach from the material end of existence cannot give us any certitude of validity for this hypothesis. He has been examining a hypothesis that before the hypothesis there is a problem. So the attempt is how to find the problem. So I repeat the problem for the sake of the total comprehension. We are having class once a week only, so we forget what has been. He notices first that there is a law and an order in the physical world. Okay, there is a rigid law that operates. Laws operate. There doesn't seem to be any freedom at all. I can tell you precisely when the sun will rise tomorrow because there is a law. Okay, and a cat is going to give birth only to a cat, a kitten, not anything else. A mango tree will produce only a mango tree. So there is a great law and a fixity of things. But at the same time, he is seeing that there is a variation. From where is the variation coming? A cat may give 5 kittens, but each one is different color, different size. They may even be different. Even twins sometimes have different natures in human beings. Okay, so this is the problem. There is law, and yet there is a chance element of freedom. So which is the one that is creating this world? what is it that is operating? That is a principle, that's a problem. So he began with a hypothesis. He says, let us imagine there is a consciousness using its own force to create the world. So that is the hypothesis that he has examined. Okay? So now he is referring to that. But an approach from the material end of existence cannot give us any certitude of validity for this hypothesis, or for that matter, any other explanation of nature and her procedure. The veil cast by the original inconscience is too thick for the mind to pierce, and it is behind this veil that is hidden the secret origination of what is manifested. There are seated the truths and powers underlying the phenomena and processes that appear to us in the material front of nature. He is telling you that if you start from matter, you can't solve the problem of consciousness. But now, he wrote this 100 years ago. But today, science is discovering that matter is not the only reality. That consciousness also is a fundamental reality. So they have broken the barrier to a certain extent. But they have still not realized from where this consciousness is coming or what it is. Okay, so
like in an interview with Narad was like being asked, at what level is the sadhana going on, and that was in around 1986 or something like that. And he said it's going on at a very physical and subconscious level. And he said the final victory will come when the battle is won at the inconscient level. And that is what he is saying here, when the veil of the inconscient plane is lifted, that is where the secret is hidden.
Yeah. And he says also something very interesting, because Sri Aurobindo's humor is always with a point. The one you are referring to, he tells Nirodha that I am trying to find the secret of matter, because that is the real problem. Matter is the one that is not allowing spirit to come out. So I have developed my own Einsteinian formula.
Yes.
He says, and then he says, just as he says about the Superman, also he says, I have got the tail of the Superman.
Yeah.
So his humor is always full of absolute truth. Okay, so it's very interesting. Yeah, that is, you can refer also to the poem God's Labor. To be able to allow consciousness to enter into matter and change it, he has to do that work. So he has to make his own matter capable of receiving the consciousness from above. So that was the work he was engaged in, and that was the work that finally Mother was doing at a cellular level. Okay, so it has not yet been done, but it is going to be done, that is sure. So, he is saying that if you go from matter upwards, you will never be able to solve the problem of consciousness coming and doing this. But an approach from the material end of existence cannot give us any certitude of validity for this hypothesis of consciousness producing the physical world, or for that matter, for any other explanation of nature and her procedure. The veil cast by the original inconscience is too thick for the mind to pierce, and it is behind this veil that is hidden the secret origination of what is manifested. There are seated the truths and powers underlying the phenomena and processes that appear to us in the material front of nature. Everything is hidden. The supermind is there, even God's presence is there, hidden in matter. That has to be unveiled. To know that greater certitude, we must follow the curve of evolving consciousness until it arrives at a height and largeness of self-enlightenment in which the primal secret is self-discovered. For presumably, it must evolve, must eventually bring out what was held from the beginning by the occult original consciousness in things, of which it's a gradual manifestation. I'll read the whole para, we'll come back to it. In life, it would be clearly hopeless to seek for the truth. For life begins with a formulation in which consciousness is still sub-mental, and therefore to us as mental beings and therefore to us as mental beings, appears as inconscient or at most subconscious. And our own investigation into this stage of life, studying it from outside, cannot be more fruitful of the secret truth than our examination of matter. Even when mind develops in life, its first functional aspect is a mentality involved in action, in vital and physical needs and preoccupations, in impulses, desires, sensations, emotions, unable to stand back from these things and observe and know them. In the human mind, there is the first hope of understanding, discovery, a free comprehension. Here we might seem to be coming to the possibility of self-knowledge and world knowledge. But in fact, our mind can at first only observe facts and processes, and for the rest, it has to make deductions and inferences, to construct hypotheses, to reason, to speculate. In order to discover the secret of consciousness, it would have to know itself and determine the reality of its own being and process. But as in animal life, emerging consciousness is involved in vital action and movement. So in the human being, mind consciousness is involved in its own whirl of thoughts, an activity in which it is carried on without rest, and in which its very reasonings and speculations are determined in their tendency, trend, conditions by its own temperament, mental turn, past formation and line of energy, inclination, preference, an inborn natural selection. We do not freely determine our thinking according to the truth of things. It is determined for us by our nature. We can indeed stand back with a certain detachment and observe the workings of the mental energy in us, but it is still only a process. But it is still only its process that we see, and not any original source of our mental determinations. We can build theories and hypotheses of the process of mind, but a veil is still there over the inner secret of ourselves, our consciousness, our total nature. He has gone into great detail, but essentially what he's saying, the hypothesis that I started with, supermind is creating the world. But if you start from the lower end, you will never be able to solve the problem that it is mind that is creating the world. So, if you are a scientist, you will say matter is creating life and life is creating mind. If you are a scientist, if you start from matter. But if you are a spiritual person, you will know that is the real creator and not matter. Matter is created by spirit. Okay? But in the evolution, you see that matter is producing life and producing mind. So he's saying if you go from the bottom, you have to keep climbing until you come to a point where you hit the solution. So where is the solution? He will tell you one by one, he will take you from each plane. Here he has dealt with matter and life and mind. And he says even there, you are not able to solve the problem. Okay? We'll go into great detail. So I read each sentence. But an approach from the material end of existence, we are starting from matter, okay, cannot give us any certitude of validity for this hypothesis. Which is the hypothesis talking about? That consciousness is creating everything. Consciousness and force are creating everything. Consciousness contributes to the chance element and freedom element, and force is contributing to the law element and the fixity. Okay? That's his hypothesis he is starting with. For that matter, for any other explanation of nature and a procedure. In other words, he is saying that if you start from matter, like the scientist is doing, and get stuck only at that, you will never solve the problem of who is the creator of the universe. You will never be able to solve the problem. Any explanation you give, you will get stuck. And he is explaining why. The veil cast by the original inconscience is too thick for the mind to pierce, and it is behind this veil that is hidden the secret origination of what is manifested. In other words, there is an involution We have started with the theory of the Satchidananda. We have begun with that. There are other theories, but from those theory, there is Satchidananda which manifests, involves itself in matter. So in matter, you have life. In life, you have mind. In mind, you have supermind. And in supermind, there is Satchidananda. Everything is there. And slowly it is evolving one by one. So if you start from here, until you go to the top, you will never solve the problem of who is the creator. Science says matter is a creator. The yogi will tell you at the end that no, it is consciousness that is the real creator. Okay? So, in fact, Srimata says very interestingly, he says that matter is not the creator, it is the created. Consciousness has created. So, he says the scientist makes a mistake of confusing creator and created. So that's why he's saying it's impossible for the scientist to think that consciousness is the real creator. But as I told you, 100 years earlier he wrote this, now they are breaking the barrier. Many scientists are having spiritual experiences. So I go to the next sentence. The veil caused by the original inconscience is too thick for the mind to pierce, and it is indeed behind this veil that is hid the secret origination of what is manifested. There are seated the truths and powers underlying the phenomena and processes that appear to us in the material front of nature. We see nature, we see matter creating life, and we see it creating mind. And we think that matter is the creator. Okay? Apparent. To know with greater certitude, we must follow the curve of evolving consciousness until it arrives at a height and largeness of self-enlightenment, in which the primal secret is self-discovered. So, we have seen that when life is coming out, more consciousness is there. When mind comes up, even more consciousness is there. So, why not keep exploring more and more and going higher and higher until you come to self-enlightenment? That's a process we should follow. That's what he's saying. Okay? Very reasonable. To know with greater certitude, we must follow the curve of evolving consciousness until it arrives at a height and largeness of self-enlightenment, in which the primal secret is self-discovered. For presumably, it must evolve. Okay, now he's using the word presumably, because evolution has produced life and matter, but some may say that's the end. So he's saying presumably we can presume that it will continue. He used the word presumably. Okay? It must evolve, must eventually bring out what was held from the beginning by the occult original consciousness in things. He is now leaning on the hypothesis that he has made. Okay? So he is going back to the hypothesis. By an occult means secret. Secret original consciousness in things, of which is a gradual manifestation. So, the original consciousness is in the inconscience, and it is secretly evolving upwards. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, can we find the secret in life? He says it is not possible. In life, it would be clearly hopeless to seek the truth. For life begins with a formulation in which consciousness is still submental, and therefore, to us as mental beings, appears as inconscient or at most subconscious. It is very obvious that the animal is only half conscious. And our own investigation into this stage of life, studying it from outside, cannot be more fruitful of the secret truth than our examination of matter. We will be able to succeed as much as we are looking at matter and finding out things. Life also will be able to find out only that much. So can we go even higher and find out? That's the next sentence. Even when mind develops in life, its first functional aspect is the mentality involved in action, in vital and physical needs and preoccupations, in impulses, desires, sensations, emotions, unable to stand back from these things and observe to know them. What he is talking of here in very complicated language, I'll identify the words for you. There is first of all a physical mind. Then there is a vital mind, and then there is a pure mind. Okay? So, the physical mind is that part of the brain which interprets your senses. the senses need interpretation. So that's called the manas in Indian philosophy, and that's what he's saying. Look at the words he's using. Even when mind develops in life, its first functional aspect is a mentality involved in action. The action is hiding the mentality. So it doesn't come out very clearly. So the action involves the mind. He is talking about the physical mind. Okay? Then it comes out in physical needs and preoccupations, then in impulses, desires, vital sensations and emotions. This is the vital mind. There is a physical mind, there is a vital mind, and finally there is a pure mind. Same says in the synthesis, pure mind is rare even in human beings. Very few can think clearly and logically. Their vital is always interfering with their mind. Okay? Their likes and dislikes are influencing their thinking. It's not objective thinking at all. So this is what he's saying. Even at the mind level, even when you are at the pure mind level, problem is not solved. You still are confused as to who is the real creator.
Sri Aurobindo gives example for someone who has a pure mind. He mentioned Plato, no?
Plato and Shankara, he says, are the greatest that the intellect has produced in the world.
Right.
But he doesn't speak of them as pure mind, but obviously it is pure mind.
Right.
And any yogi can get the pure mind if he stops identifying himself with body-mind life. If his consciousness escapes from body-mind life, and the pure mind at its lowest level is the higher mind. The higher mind is the lowest of the spiritual planes of consciousness. When you are identified with your body-mind life, you are, even if you are an intellectual, you are identified with your thoughts. That's what he'll tell you here in the sentence. We'll see that. You are identified with your thoughts. You are thinking, I am thinking. Actually, he'll tell you that thoughts are occurring and you have to observe your thoughts as though somebody else is thinking.
Could we say Nulinida had a pure mind?
He was certainly at a higher level of consciousness. To know with greater certainty, we must follow the curve. We read that. So in life, that also we have seen. Even when mind develops in life, its first functional aspect is a mentality involved in action. This is the physical mind, in vital and physical needs and preoccupations. Then, in vital and physical needs and preoccupations. Then, in impulses, desires, sensations, emotions. Your mind, which is agreeing to your vital, okay, and desires, and justifies them. That's a vital mind. Unable to stand back from these things and observe them and know them. In the human mind, there is the first hope of understanding, discovery, a free comprehension. Here, we might seem to be coming to the possibility of self-knowledge and world knowledge. So, actually, when he is talking about the physical mind and the vital mind, he is including the animals. But in human beings, he is saying, the possibility of a pure mind comes up. Actually, in the synthesis, is that very few are the human beings who have a pure mind. Okay? Mostly they let their desires and their impulses guide them. The mind is influenced by your vital and the body also. Okay? So, in the human mind, there is a first hope, not a certitude of understanding, discovery, a free comprehension. Here we might seem to be coming to the possibility of self-knowledge and world knowledge. Self-knowledge, knowledge about yourself internally, psychologically. And world knowledge, science. Okay? Knowledge of the world. But in fact, our mind can at first only observe facts and processes. And for the rest, it has to make deductions and inferences, construct hypotheses, to reason, to speculate. So, science is always proceeding on observation, continued observation, and then you make a hypothesis. And the hypothesis must fit all the facts. Then, a day will come when those new fact comes up and you have to change your hypothesis. So, that is the way it proceeds in the physical world. And you can see in science also very clearly like that. Okay, there is I don't remember the exact terms, but when Einstein came, he gave a new orientation to it. Then, now when the other scientists are coming, they are saying that consciousness is the determinant. So things are going on changing upwards. But still you have not solved the problem. Okay, so what is the problem? Who is the creator? That is the real problem. So possibility of seven world. But in fact, our mind can at first only observe facts and processes, and for the rest it has to make deductions and inferences. Okay? So, but deductions and inferences, to construct hypotheses, to reason, to speculate. You make things. Now, these two words are there, deduction and inference. Okay? Deduction and induction. These are terms used in in logic. Okay? Deduction is you observe certain things. You proceed from a hypothesis and then you come to a conclusion. The deductive process, deduction is and induction. There are two methods. One is you make a hypothesis. Let us say man is mortal. Sorry. Yes. Man is mortal. Soumya is a man. Therefore, he is mortal. This is deduction process. Induction process is the other way around. I noticed the sun rising from the east today. Yesterday also I saw it rising from the east. Day before yesterday also it rose from the east. 1 month ago also it rose from the east. I now, induction, tomorrow also it will rise from the east. So these are the two logical processes how they go about, deduction and induction. Okay, so he is talking of logic. The mind uses logic, that's what he is saying, to construct hypotheses, to reason, to speculate. In order to discover the secret of consciousness, it would have to know itself and determine the reality of its own being and process. Mind has to know itself. But mind is very busy trying to know the outside world, but it has to know itself. Okay? So, and determine the reality of its own being and process. But as in animal life, the emerging consciousness is involved in vital action and movement. So in the human being, mind consciousness is involved in its own whirl of thoughts. What's he saying? He's saying that we are completely identified with our thoughts and we think that we are thinking. But I'll go step by step, then you'll understand. I can observe my body. Okay? I can see that yesterday I had an injury and now it is paining. I'm observing my body. You can do that. Can you observe your own emotions? When you are angry, can you observe your emotion? You can observe after it has happened. But if you have the capacity of observing your anger when it's happening, you are already in control. Normally it happens afterwards. Oh, I was angry yesterday, I should not have been angry. You can observe your emotions, but after a gap of time. In the thoughts also, yesterday I was thinking of going there, so I am observing my thought, but after it has occurred. Do you have the capacity to observe your thought while it is occurring? That's a separation of the mind observing itself. Then you are in pure mind. That's what he's saying. Okay? You have to lose your identification with your thoughts. Okay? So, mind consciousness is involved in its own whirl of thoughts, an activity in which it is carried on without rest and which in its very reasonings and speculations are determined in their tendency, trend, conditions by its own temperament, mental turn, past formation and line of energy, inclination, preference. All these belong to the mind. An inborn natural selection. Now he is telling you the truth. We do not freely determine our thinking according to the truth of things. It is determined for us by our nature. You have a physical nature, you have a vital nature, and you have a mental nature. Some people are intelligent, some people are sharp, some people are not. So that's your nature. And it is universal nature which is putting thoughts into your mind. And you are not thinking, you are only reflecting the thoughts that are coming into your mind. So thoughts are occurring in you. You are not thinking. This you can observe when you separate yourself from your thoughts. The mental Purusha separates itself from the Prakriti Purusha, the Prakriti mind. Sorry. The mental Purusha separates itself from the mental Prakriti. The mental Prakriti is the brain in which thoughts are coming from outside and you are watching them. I am not thinking. Thoughts are occurring in my mind. I am seeing them. Then there is a possibility of finding the truth. That's what he's saying. Okay? We do not freely determine our thinking according to the truth of things. It is determined for us by our nature. We can indeed stand back with a certain detachment and observe the workings of the mental energy in us. But it is still only its process that we see and not any original source of our mental determinations. We can build theories and hypotheses of the process of mind, but a veil is still there over the inner secret of ourselves, our consciousness, our total nature. So, even when you have got a pure mind, you still have not solved the problem. There is still an ignorance even in the mind. And this ignorance continues even to the spiritual planes. It continues. It goes up, 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 up. Srivda says even the overmind consciousness, which is very high, that also is a source of ignorance. So we'll continue with the next para next time. If you start from matter, you begin with the idea that universe is creating life and mind. But you still can't solve it. It's not clear to you at all. So you have to keep climbing, keep climbing, keep climbing. That's what he's saying. Next we'll see how he goes on from one plane to another plane.